The Babadook is a remarkable movie. In a time where rollercoaster horror flicks dominated the market and people ate up whatever by-the-numbers haunted house slop was planted in front of them, Australian writer and director Jennifer Kent produced her feature-length debut with this art house take on the psychological horror picture. But what is so special about it? Well, it's been 7 years since its release, and it still managed to send chills down my spine upon revisiting it. But much more than that, The Babadook provides a window into what it's like to live crippled by grief for a lost loved one. It shows us how easy it is to be consumed by grief, to allow it to tear your life apart, to be controlled by it. That is, unless you stop, make peace with the pain that's so unbearable, and learn to live with it so as to make you stronger. Learn to live with the Babadook. It's a very poignant and even therapeutic message, which is deeply embedded underneath a sincere performance from Essie Davis as its main character, Amelia, the widowed mother of Samuel. She struggles to take care of her son, given his extremely disobedient nature, caused by his numerous behavioural issues. So I'm going to split this video up into segments of aspects of the film that I'm going to talk about specifically. If there are any that you're interested in particular, please skip ahead to them if you'd like. It's fine by me, so let's get started. Amelia is deeply depressed and spends every waking moment taking care of everybody except from herself. We see within the first moments that she is exhausted. She's in dire need of some personal space, as Samuel spends most nights demanding her undivided attention. With a stony expression that contains within it a degree of resentment, she distances herself from her son and turns her back on him. We learn that Amelia lost her husband Oscar in a car accident, which tragically occurred as he was driving her to the hospital to give birth to Samuel. Her son therefore represents for Amelia not only a great burden due to his needs for extra attention and care, but also as a personification of her grief, reminding her of the tragic events that took place on the day that he was born. It's for this reason that she does not celebrate Samuel's birthday, and her deeply buried bitterness for what her son represents may only contribute to his behavioural issues and aggressive attitude. She gives him all of her time that she can spare, but she can't help but be emotionally neglectful towards him, as he forces her to confront what she has lost. It's a vicious cycle, which only makes her parental duties even more stressful. To afford herself even the smallest amount of respite, she allows Samuel to watch television, often unsupervised, which fills his head with images of nightmarish monsters. As a result, he dedicates much of his time to building a variety of contraptions and weapons that he intends to use to defend his mother. That might seem sweet as an idea, but as he sneaks them into school and uses them on his classmates, this only further illustrates his antisocial tendencies, and the school suggests that he should perhaps be separated from the other children for their safety. With no time to enjoy even the smallest satisfactions that life has to offer, her social life in tatters, and her family relationships strained, Amelia's mental health is deteriorating, and this is only worsened by the appearance of a suspicious book within Sam's collection of bedtime stories. Reading the book to him without first checking that it was suitable for him to hear, she is horrified to find that the book depicts violent images of a boogeyman invading their home and contains a sinister message within it, stating that once you let the Babadook into your house, its influence will make you wish that you were dead. Samuel's head is corrupted by the monster's terrifying concept, and so understandably, Amelia throws the book away after he begins to commit violent acts in the name of the Babadook. Now in a deeper pit of despair than she has ever found herself in, and isolated from her sister and her co-workers, Amelia seeks medical help for Samuel after he suffers a seizure in their car upon claiming to see the Babadook. Broken, she pleads to the doctor and successfully begs for medication to help put Samuel to sleep, so that she too finally might get some rest. Things look to be improving, and she looks forward to erasing the Babadook from her mind. But with several aggressive knocks at her door, she finds the book that she had thought destroyed, repaired and at her feet on the doorstep, and this time containing an extra chapter in which Amelia murders her dog and her son whilst under the Babadook's influence. She begins to see the Babadook in everyday life, and is paralysed when it later appears in her home and possesses her. Behaving noticeably more hostile to all those around her than she did before, Samuel is terrified of his mother. She locks them in the house one night, and her mental state seems to break entirely. In an effort to gain some peace and quiet, she murders the barking dog and turns for Samuel next. The metaphor here is clear, but effective nonetheless. Her grief was left unaddressed, and no matter how she tried to forget her pain or paper over the cracks in her stressful life, with medicine for example, her illness has not been cured, only postponed, and it has now consumed her entirely. Only upon hearing Samuel claim that he loves her, even though he knows that it's not reciprocated, does Amelia realise how much damage has been caused by her unwillingness to address her grief. She takes control of her body back from the Babadook, and the idea that grief is an illness is very much evident once again when she ejects the Babadook's influence from her body. In one last attempt to seize control of Amelia's life, the Babadook drags Samuel upstairs. Amelia confronts it, declaring that she's not afraid of it anymore, which causes it to retreat to the basement, where it will remain with Oscar's old possessions which are stored there. The message of the movie is struck home in the epilogue, where we can see a far happier Amelia celebrating Samuel's 8th birthday in their garden. She has learned to love Samuel and to be thankful that he's in her life. Then, the icing on the cake is shown, as Amelia goes to the basement and feeds the Babadook some worms from the garden. She softly speaks to it, and it's clear to us that she has learned to live with her grief. Amelia is very compelling as a protagonist. You can feel the weight of the world on her shoulders as her husband has passed away, taking much of her joy with him, and she finds herself left with the enormous responsibility of raising Samuel by herself. We see in the film that she often observes people living a romantic lifestyle that she wishes she could have from afar, whether it's when she's drooling at the television as some Hollywood movie romance is being displayed, or if it's watching that couple making out in their car. It's clear to us that she misses that spontaneity of life. She's enslaved to Samuel and enslaved to her job at the nursing home. The scene in her room when she has finally gotten a moment to herself for some me time, only to be interrupted by Samuel jumping into her bed beside her, could have been played for laughs in a I can't catch a break kind of way. But the fact that she can't catch a break is exactly why it's not funny at all. It's extremely stressful to watch because you can get a sense that she's at the end of her tether. When Amelia goes to her sister's house for the niece's birthday party, the viewers sympathise even more with the character, in no small part down to Essie Davis's dejected and exhausted expression. Her sister's friends try to connect with Amelia over her husband's death, but they wind up insulting her with condescending remarks of pity. It's really satisfying then to hear her tear into them after when they're complaining about the hardships in their life, which appear to be trivial and insignificant when held against her own. Davis puts in a phenomenal shift throughout, and she's absolutely terrifying at the end of the film when the Babadook takes hold of her. She imitates the Babadook's stance with her fingers stretched out by her sides and her kind of elevated posture, and whatever effect is used in post-production to amplify and lower her speaking voice is brilliant in instilling the sense of dread that you feel for Samuel. Samuel is for many people a make-or-break aspect of the film. Noah Wiseman is painful to endure, as I'm sure was the intention. The thing I would say is that if you can't sit through the kid in this film for 90 minutes, then Kent's vision has surely been achieved, because she's showing you how hard it is for Amelia to raise him. As I alluded to in the plot synopsis, I think it's not his fault that he's so ill-disciplined. His mother has been there for him, but has always had that part in the back of her mind, that rejects him and holds him responsible for her husband's death. She even says at one point that she wishes it was him that had died. And so, as a result, you're going to be messed up. He's a spoilt brat of a kid who, in large part, controls Amelia. I guess that's also a result of not having a father figure in his life to look up to, so he isn't quite sure how to behave. I find his blunt delivery of the lines the script gives him funny at times, like when he tells strangers why he doesn't have a dad. Those provide some great moments of dark comedy. I don't have too much to say about the Babadook himself because he's not so much a character as he is an idea. He doesn't have lines or anything, but I will talk about his design. He's dressed in the clothing that Oscar used to wear, which is hanging up in the basement, and that again reinforces the idea that this character is a representation of Amelia's memory of him, which is going to haunt her until she addresses it and puts it to rest. I like the stop motion kind of choppy footage used when he's moving as well. It's very freaky and otherworldly. Also, his face just gives me nightmares. Like, look at that. Jesus, get some vitamin D. The sound design here is great as well. Whenever the Babadook is on screen, there's this rattling sound, almost like a rattlesnake's tail. I'm not quite sure how they produced it, but it's very unsettling and it sticks out like a sore thumb, especially when it's first used, because nothing else in the movie before the first time they read the Babadook book is as distinctly unnatural. It's used at certain points instead of showing you the Babadook, so you can hear he's there but you can't see him, which leaves a lot to imagination. There's a lot of mystery which is kept intact by the end of the film, due both to, I'm sure, budget restraints, but also because Kent knows that horror comes from the unknown, and I wish more modern horror played to that instead of big banging jump scares. The Babadook's voice is one of the freakiest parts of the film, and if I were to put money on it, I would say that this is what most people will be creeped out by in this film. Which is impressive given that you only hear it twice in the 90-minute runtime, I think. The score uses bells, kinda like a music box vibe, as if the Babadook is enticing Samuel into reading the book. There's also subtle use of children's laughter a few times. It never goes full on Andy Muschietti at 2017 with children laughing so loud that it's almost screaming. Just really disturbing juxtaposition of innocent sounds with disturbing images, used quite tastefully throughout. What I will say is nothing in this realm is particularly innovative, but everything is done well. It's, for the most part, visuals done simply but done well with some exceptional moments sprinkled in, like here. The movie's colour palette is very dark, glum, and reflects the despair of Amelia perfectly. It's like we're seeing the world as she sees it, sapped of all colour. The decor of their house is full of greys, blacks, and dark browns, predominantly. There's a conscious effort to maintain this bleak look in other scenes, like when Amelia is sitting in her car, watching the couple making out. The cars we see are all grey or dark in colour to keep up the idea that Amelia's grim outlook travels with her everywhere she goes, like a cloud. Then, the moments where there is colour is again deliberate. Take her niece's birthday party, for example. The environment looks far more optimistic and vibrant. Then my favourite inclusion is in the epilogue, where we can see that there has been an injection of life into their house. Some reds have found their way into the couch where there was just black before, some yellows there too. It's just a very simple use of colour to reflect the atmosphere and also the mentality of Amelia. Like I said, nothing groundbreaking really, but it's the fundamentals done right. As far as framing and camera movement goes, there's some trippy stuff going on, particularly with the Babadook. There are these sped up travelling shots where we see the Babadook moving through the house that are really creepy. I love the still shot where Amelia floats demonically towards Samuel. There are quite a few close-ups of Amelia screaming, which are always quite visceral and tend to be deliberately invasive. For instance, when the Babadook is possessing her. This is a funny moment that I didn't spot myself, but had it pointed out to me, where they've tricked us into thinking that the swing set is higher than it actually is. You can see they've just reused the same shot or the same part of the frame, but shot differently to create the impression it's much higher than it is. I guess you can call that a mistake, but it's so trivial it really doesn't matter. All in all, it's great work. The Babadook is one of my favourite movies of the last decade. It's a very human film, which will relate to many who have found themselves hampered by grief in their lives. Loss is a tragic part of life, but when it's the person that you spend most waking moments with that leaves you, the person that you intend to spend your life with, then I imagine that picking yourself back up must seem a Herculean task. The Babadook highlights the importance of addressing great loss head-on, seeking help not only from those around you, but from within. Because the longer you run from it, the more it will consume you.